I love charts. If you are a regular viewer of the show, you'll be across this. But I don't think anyone, including me, has ever loved a chart as much as Donald Trump loves this chart.
I love that chart. I'm going to sleep with that chart for the rest of my life, that chart.
In fact, he loves it so much he credits it with saving his life.
Without that chart, I would not be here today. That was the chart that saved my life.
It's a chart which shows the number of people arrested by US border security trying to cross from Mexico into the United States without a US visa. It belongs to Republican Senator Ron Johnson, who told Fox News that he's been working on it for a while.
So that's a chart that I've been developing literally since 2014, adding to it every month.
He said that he showed it to Trump and
he liked it. Turned it over to his staff. They made a few changes in terms of graphics on that.
The changes he made were very Trumpy. While Ron Johnson's chart is accurately titled Southwest Border Encounters, Trump's team have added, in a different font, illegal immigration into the US, Biden world record illegal immigrants, many from prisons and mental institutions, also terrorists. Nothing like this has ever happened to our country before! ! Ever since Trump made those edits, he's been showing the chart to crowds at rallies.
Take a look at that chart.
It was this chart that he was turning to look at as an assassin's bullet hit his ear in July.
Take a look at what happened.
The chart saved his life. Trump loves this chart because it shows the number of border arrests clearly are going up since he left office. More people are trying to get into the country. And since Kamala Harris became the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee for president, he's been hitting that point even harder.
But she's the architect of the border invasion, trying to pretend she's strong on border security.
His campaign is pushing the idea that Kamala Harris was appointed to be Joe Biden's border czar.
This is America's border czar, and she's failed us.
Calling someone a czar of anything is American political shorthand. It means they're the absolute authority on a certain issue, that the buck stops with them. When Harris's campaign points out that she wasn't ever given the job of border czar, he hits her on that too.
She's now pretending that she was never called the border czar. She was called the border czar the first day. She's the border czar.
The Trump campaign is arguing that an unprecedented number of people, including criminals and mental patients, and also terrorists, are being invited into the United States by border czar Kamala Harris. Understanding how much of that argument is true is really important for November's election. Immigration and control of the southern border is a policy area that Trump hopes will convince potential Harris voters to stay home or vote for him. This whole issue is pretty complicated. It's not a matter of Trump is making all this up, but he's also not telling the truth. Today, what's real and what's fake when it comes to Kamala Harris and the US border? I'm Matt Bevan, and this is If You're Listening. Okay, back to Trump's favourite chart for just a second. It appears to show a sudden jump in the number of migrants attempting to cross the US-Mexico border in February and March 2021, just after Joe Biden and Kamala Harris took office. So let's start there.
This is the bridge in which you walk across to get into Mexico.
In March 2021, ABC reporter Catherine Diss stood at the bottom of a ramp in Reynosa, Mexico, which takes people up onto a covered walkway bridge which crosses the Rio Grande River into Texas. And she interviewed some of the people camped there.
They have tried to cross into the United States on several occasions via the Rio Grande River. They've paid cartel groups to take them across, but they have been detained by border agents and deported back here.
After speaking to people camped on the Mexican side of the border, Catherine crossed into the US and took a drive with Border Patrol agents along the Rio Grande.
So we've been driving less than 10 minutes and we've come across our first group of asylum seekers. Every few minutes, more emerge from the Rio Grande River.
In the second month of Joe Biden's term, 173,000 people were apprehended by Border Patrol, higher than any single month of the Trump presidency. Nearly 20,000 of them were unaccompanied children.
She's 10 years old and she's coming by herself. They're from Guatemala. She's very scared, she's frightened, and I'm telling her that there's nothing to worry about. We're here to assist her.
The children have nothing but the clothes they're wearing. Their pants are covered in mud up to their knees where they waded across the river.
Video released by the new administration shows young migrants living in crowded facilities while they wait to be placed in government-run shelters.
Whatever you think about US immigration law, whether you think that control of the border is too restrictive or too lax, thousands of people trying to cross a muddy river or a dangerous desert into America is a crisis that needs to be dealt with. Even more so when so many of them are unaccompanied children. The question is, how?
This is shaping up to be one of the biggest challenges of the Biden administration in their first 100 days, ensuring that they manage the issue of immigration in a humane way without it becoming an even bigger humanitarian crisis.
Humane. That's the key word there. Biden and Harris had campaigned against Donald Trump's immigration policies, calling them cruel and a violation of human rights.
I know what a crime looks like, and I will tell you, an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
Donald Trump used to blame Mexico for the number of migrants coming to America. He used to say that he would build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. But by 2021, the vast majority of the migrants weren't coming from Mexico. They were coming through Mexico.
Most of them are from Central America, countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras.
These three countries are Mexico's Mexico. They form the northern tip of Central America. Together they're known as the Northern Triangle. In March 2021, half of all undocumented migrants crossing the US southern border were from the Northern Triangle. Joe Biden had an idea. Back when he was the vice president to Barack Obama, he had been tasked with travelling to the Northern Triangle to try and figure out how to prevent people there from leaving their home and trying to get to America.
The best way to keep people from coming is keep them from wanting to leave.
He thought it was an important and rewarding job, so he decided to give his own vice president the same job.
I've asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle.
Kamala Harris, from the very beginning, tried to be very specific with everyone about what she was being asked to do. She didn't want to tie her political future to the administration's ability to stop migrants crossing the border, or get stuck with any politically tricky nicknames.
The President, Joe Biden, asked me to take on a diplomatic effort to engage with the issues affecting the Northern Triangle, and to do that in a way that we address both what I think of as the acute and the root causes of migration.
That sounds boring though. Root causes? Yawn. This is how it was covered in the American media.
As the border crisis escalates, President Biden is putting the vice president in charge.
This is the day she's been appointed the border czar.
Republicans added fuel to the fire, consistently calling her the border czar and criticising her for not visiting the border itself.
Where is the border czar? Vice President Harris.
But she wasn't a czar in charge of all immigration policy. From the start, it seems that she knew that was a fake title that she really didn't want. She reminded people over and over, tasked with a diplomatic mission to deal with the root causes of migration from a few specific countries. Fixing the Northern Triangle was more than enough for Kamala Harris to be getting along with. Its problems are incredibly complicated, and they're down to a mixture of tricky geography and decades of bad policy, a lot of it bad US policy.
Here, the American dollar is financing an army beyond Honduras's needs. And under cover of its jungles, the CIA has trained a guerrilla force to fight communism.
I want you to imagine life as a coffee farmer in Guatemala.
Men and women earn their living on coffee farms, which are located in lovely highlands.
You're scratching out your living on the family farm on the side of a mountain. Your parents live with you, your kids live there too. Sometimes when coffee prices are high, life is good. But other times, your farm is devastated by brutal weather.
Many people across Central America cannot believe how nature has cursed them.
In 2020, the price of coffee is about $1 a pound, half of what it was 5 years ago. And the gangs which transport cocaine from Colombia through your country to the US are demanding a cut of your profits. The government is corrupt. Less corrupt than Honduras, where the president is a literal drug trafficker, but still pretty bad. You really need a good year. But then...
The eye of the storm is forecast to move north and hit central Honduras on Thursday.
2 massive hurricanes hit the region in 2 weeks.
The most powerful storms to hit Central America in years.
Your crop is devastated. The gang arrives to collect their extortion money.
She doesn't want to go back to El Salvador. Her husband has already been killed, and she's got to pay like a monthly protection.
What are you and your family supposed to do?
2 years ago, they kidnapped my daughter. She was 15. Then in January, they threatened to kidnap my other daughters. One of them was raped, so we fled.
Is it any wonder that people want to leave?
They're from Honduras. They've been walking 30 days from Honduras all the way to right now.
So some of your neighbours pack up and begin the trek to America, or pay a smuggler to take their teenage kids to the border, and you start to consider doing the same. And that's when Kamala Harris arrives in your country.
To folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border, do not come. Do not come.
Now, if your life is a nightmare with gangs and starvation on your doorstep, you might still be thinking,
I'm going to come.
But the team working behind the scenes on Harris's trip had a message for these people, a simple one. It was, if you're in the Northern Triangle and want to come to America, don't leave home because you will be sent back. But it's okay, because we are going to improve the quality of life in your home country and you won't need to leave. One sentence would be enough. Say it loud, say it clear, say it in Spanish if possible. I'm being told that Kamala Harris absolutely cannot speak any Spanish at all, but say it clearly. Don't leave. I'm trying to fix your country. Just say that.
There are legal methods by which migration can and should occur. But we, as one of our priorities, will discourage illegal migration. And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back.
Discourage? You believe? I mean, I get what she's saying, but it's not the punchy line the administration sent her to deliver. It was an unclear message when what was needed was a very, very clear one.
That's what the traffickers are telling them. They says the new president is more kind. The new president is going to let you in.
They think that the U.S. government, the new administration, is going to have less severe immigration policies. And because of that, somehow they think that the U.S. is going to let them in.
Still, Kamala Harris set about looking for things that she could do to help the Northern Triangle to make it more appealing to stay there. She enticed American businesses to invest in the region. She tried to help crack down on corruption. She increased government aid. But then, entirely coincidentally,
the world's largest coffee producer, Brazil, has been hit by severe drought and frost, destroying around a fifth of crops. Coronavirus outbreaks have also shut down supply chains.
In the second half of 2021, growing coffee suddenly became profitable again.
Global coffee prices hit a 7-year high.
In the year after Biden and Harris took office, the price of coffee beans doubled, and the rate of migration from the Northern Triangle went back to where it was during the Trump administration. Problem solved, bippity-boppity-boo, well done, Kamala. Now, she didn't really do anything, but as she likes to say,
you exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
The problem was that just as the migration from the Northern Triangle plummeted, it was skyrocketing from other places. The Hondurans, Salvadorans, and Guatemalans desperately trying to cross the border were replaced by Brazilians fleeing that drought, Cubans and Venezuelans fleeing spiralling inflation, and Haitians fleeing widespread violence after the collapse of their government. It's like playing whack-a-mole. You solve one problem and 2 others pop up. On Donald Trump's favourite chart, a migrant is a migrant. You can't tell that one problem has been replaced by another one. And if you think that Kamala Harris was the border czar, that chart clearly shows that she's not very good at it. It's not true, though. That title, Border Czar, was given to her by the media and by Republicans. She was extremely clear all along that she was in charge of a very specific problem, a problem that kind of got solved on its own. But that doesn't entirely absolve her. Even if she's not the Border Czar, she is still the Vice President. Under Biden and Harris, 8 million people have attempted to make the crossing. Hundreds die every year, drowning in the Rio Grande, murdered by gangs, overheating in the desert. Hundreds more just disappear. Something has to be done. And if she becomes the president, Kamala Harris will become the Border Czar, whether she likes it or not.